Welcome to the channel. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Joining me on today's video, guys, we'll be looking at something completely different than what I usually look at, and I think you guys will absolutely love these watches that I'm going to show you. These are brand new. They arrived a few days ago, and in fact I did feature them back end of last year in one of my Aliexpress videos. So let's take a look and see what they are, and just have a look at these three beauties that I have in front of me. Let me quickly show you the store where I got these from. These watches were from the Andaya watch store. Now that watch store I have used a fair few times. This is the same watch store that bought us the Sieg Flammer watches. They bought us the Decipher, and they also have a few different models that they're working on. Now I did request these watches from them, and they much obligingly sent them over to me for free. And the reason I got them is I find myself in my personal hobby kind of going towards some vintage watches now. I am starting to appreciate, different kinds of watches, a lot of these slimmer, old school watches. And in fact, I recently bought myself a Seiko SQ Quartz, quite an old watch. I'll put up the model number in the bottom left hand corner, and I have featured this in one or two videos. And yeah, maybe I'm just maturing through the hobby, but I find myself looking at some vintage models and not really looking at specs as much, just looking at looks and shape, because I do realize that as you go back, some of the watches were quite unique in terms of the case shapes, etc., and the designs. And what we find when we look at micro brands and all what's going on currently, we do find a lot of watches kind of going back to that old school look and aesthetic. So in front of me, I've got three heavily vintage inspired original Chinese watches. You can see they've got a boxed crystal, and they also feature mechanical hand winding movements. And the reason I chose these, some of the features that you can see immediately stuck out to me. Looking at the case shape, etc., that crystal and these gilt applied features, the dial color, and they look just so understated. And they look quite well finished, especially for the price. So looking at the store, you'll see a bunch of variations. They've got maybe 8 or 9 different versions. I went with these ones, and they do have a few different strap options as well, but I only got the one strap with this croc style leather strap that you see here. I was immediately pleasantly surprised taking them out the box, and you can see for such a cheap watch they look incredibly well done. The price is £40, in around $60. For that, you're getting a mechanical hand winding original Chinese watch with some really decent aesthetics. As I said, vintage inspired, to give you some of that old school nostalgia. You'll actually be shocked how well made these watches are for that crazy price of $60 or £40. Let's take a closer look, give you a run off of the specs, dimensions, and go through the smaller features and details. Now, specs wise, you got pretty basic specifications as you'd expect for the price point. You've got a stainless steel case with a glass crystal. You have 30 meters of water resistance, and the watch runs the Shanghai 8120 mechanical hand winding 17 joule movement with a beat rate of 21,600 vibrations per hour. Now, I was shocked by the functionality of these movements and the accuracy, which I'll show you just a little bit later in the review. Now let's look at dimensions. The diameter of the watch is actually under 36mm. They are coming in at 35.4mm. You've got a case thickness of 11mm, including this really high dome crystal. A lug to lug of 45mm with a lug width of 18mm, and an overall weight of 40 grams with the supplied leather straps. Now, just a couple of words on the specs and dimensions. Now, while the website does state this is 316L stainless steel, for me in hand it looks like it may be plated, like a nickel plating or chrome plating. It just doesn't look like the stainless steel that I've seen. I could be wrong, but there is a slight chance it isn't full stainless steel. But with the price point, I don't really mind. As I said, the main reason why I bought these for was purely for the aesthetics. Some of the features that you see present here, this combination of silver and gilt, green and gilt, and of course the dimensions. But what I want to talk to you right about now is actually the movement. The movement, when I put it on the time grapher, absolutely shocked me. It is a 17 joule hand winding movement, beat rate of 21,600 vibrations per hour, and just have a look at the timograph readings. I think one of the watches that I put up, was it this cream color and gold one? It read at 0 to 2 seconds fast a day. Really linear across the time graph, very stable movement. Looking at, I think the green dial, that was the most out of spec. I think that was minus 20 seconds. And even the white one, very, very accurate, around 0 to 2 seconds. I can't remember off the top of my head, but you'll see that on screen. So that's the first thing, very cheap watch, cheap movement, but just look at the accuracy of that movement. it seems to be performing really well. Taking off the case back, you'll see it is a full mechanical hand winding movement. It also has the option to regulate it. A lot of the movements back in this day didn't really have the option, but the fact that you've got it on this watch means you can increase the accuracy if you so wanted to. Functionality wise, the watch does not hack, but it does hand wind, as I said. But am I going to go out and say these are super reliable? I think not. Having said that, we do find a lot of cheap Chinese movements. For example, the DG2813 that you find in the Pagani designs, in the earlier ones, extremely reliable. But I don't know enough about the movement to give you that verdict. So let me take you around the dials on these watches and tell you some of the features that stand out to me. So let's take a look at the first one. Let's look at that green dial. It is a glossy gradiented dial. You've got this black and green gradient present, and I really like the combination of green and gold. At the 12 o'clock with this particular one, you've got a square chamfered gold embellishment with a red ruby on the top, giving it a jewel-like appearance. You've got an applied logo below the 12, white printed text, which doesn't look right to me. They should have kept that logo in gilt and just done the text in gold as well. You've got these gold applied batons, polished, slightly chamfered as well, giving you really nice light reflections. And of course, these Dauphine styled gold hands. Again, you can see that light bouncing up there perfectly. And that second hand with that very large red tipped arrow. You've also got a printed min track in white. I really do like these polished gilt details, and this is what appeals to me. Moving on to the second one, the Zheifeng. You've got slightly larger applied golden batons and done really nice. They're not immaculate or crisp. You can see they're slightly rough around the edges, but it is in line with that vintage aesthetic. You've got that Zheifeng logo below the 12 in gilt. I am assuming that says Zheifeng in Chinese. And just above the 6, you've got the jewel count, black printed minute track, exactly same hands as the previous one, chamfered Dauphine style hands with that large red tip on that second hand. So they've all got a very similar setup, applied features, printing present, and some really decently finished hour markers and hands. And these are the small details that I'm actually drawn towards and what I really like on these watches. Looking at the silver dial, slightly different. You've got silver polished hour markers. You can see green loom dots applied around those hour markers as well. Printed minute track, printing below the 12 and above the 6. And you've got these baton like hands, which look really well done. Polished. I believe there's a slight chamfer on there, so it catches the light really nice. Those thin slithers of loom applied in the center, and the second hand with that oversized red lollipop. I really do like that design. It's something that I was drawn to. I'll actually show you the loom shot on the silver one. It is pretty decent considering the price point of the watch. Next, let's have a look at the case. The cases on all three are exactly the same, pointing at some of the really nice features that I see. One of the first things that my eyes are drawn to were these twisted lugs. That's a really nice feature. Polished, not overly amazingly well finished, which makes me think it probably is plated, because you can see like a crease in that twisted lug, which you don't really see when it is stainless steel. Slim bezel present, polished, and the whole case is actually polished. I really like the case shape as well. Look how slim that is. And that ties in with something about the dimensions. If it wasn't for this high dome glass crystal, that would be an incredibly thin watch. I'd estimate maybe 8mm. That is absolutely incredible. But the beauty of this crystal, this box style crystal, when you have it on wrist and looking at it dead on, you actually can't tell you've got such a high dome present on the watch, which really makes it look good on wrist and does give it a very thin appearance. I actually can't tell there's a huge crystal on there. On the back, you've got a screw down case back, which has got some brushing on there, some text present. The crown is just a normal push and pull crown. Just pops out, leaving you to change the time. The winding mechanism you can do just from the crown position being at 0. These are fully wound, so what will happen is when you fully wind these, you will meet a lot of resistance. So don't keep pushing past that in case you break it. So that is fully wound. I don't know how long the power reserve is. I'd expect at least 24 hours, if not more. Now, I personally think these watches are full of immense character. I really like, as I said, just the features present, that gilt embellishment, the applied markers, And you know, for a £40 watch, it is done really well. And the bonus of having a mechanical hand winding movement as well, it really fits that vintage brief. Look how simple and effective these watches look. For me, the key is in simplicity. I think that's what stands out on these watches. Regarding the straps they come with, you know, we've all seen this croc style leather straps. We all know they're not very comfortable as well. They're quite stiff and they're quite cheap looking. This does state genuine leather on the back, and they are slightly padded as well, so it does make it feel a bit better than the other stuff. But yeah, you do really need to wear them in if you can actually wear these. But you know, going back on the website, they do have some really nice woven nylon or cloth straps which look incredible. And you know, being 18mm, you can get yourself a whole host of different straps to accompany these watches, and they will fit pretty much everything, because this vintage look, absolute strap monsters. I can see a dark green leather strap on this one, for example. They're very diverse watches to put anything on there. Now, how do these watches look on wrist? So I've tried all three on wrist and they look absolutely incredible. 40 or 50 grams was the weight. You cannot feel that on wrist. The leather straps need to be a bit more supple for it to fit really nice, but you know, that positioning of the watch on wrist, it looks good. Again, the vintage look is definitely happening for me right now, and I really do like how they look on wrist. All three watches look absolutely incredible, and I'm actually happy that I was able to bring these watches to your attention, talk about them, describe them to you, because I really think for that 40-50 quid, you can actually get yourself something that is quite well made, full of character, and they look incredibly well. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. That's it from me today. Thank you everybody for watching, and I will see you on the next video.